I'm just about to release my book, or the second edition of my book, Microtonality in 56 Keys. I'm just about to put it up on my website, and I wanted to give people a little overview. For all the people that have bought the first edition already, you will know what's in the first edition, but you might want some ideas around what I've changed, what I've improved, what I've added. And for new people that haven't bought the book, this might give you a little idea, because I realized that I haven't got much information there on the internet. The people that have read it, but the internet is a big wide place, and the information doesn't always get around. So I thought it might be helpful to have a video, show people what's up. And so yeah, I'll jump right in terms of showing you around the book. First thing to notice maybe is the first edition only had 404 pages, which at that time was still quite a lot. It was a big project. It took me several years, but I've gone back and added in a whole bunch. So you can see now I've got 533 pages. It's a bit of a tome, and I was originally thinking of doing this as a print book, as a physical book, but I think now with all of the, with the Lumitone files that I've added, with the videos that I've added, and all of the hyperlinks within the book, I think it makes much, much more sense as a digital product now than it does as a physical book. You could print it out, but you would be flicking back and forth quite a lot. So I think we're better off now, and we save a bit of paper. So I'm just going to have a quick little look at the contents even. You'll notice in the first edition, I would start from chapter 1. Makes a lot of sense. But I added in another little chapter in the second edition with a little introduction, a little bit of history of my what I was doing with my keyboards, why I wrote the book, and a little bit on how to map this thing, what we're doing with a keyboard in the first place that has hexagons on it, a sort of like consistent way to get around with a color scheme, and then a whole bunch of files, so that if you look at a tuning, you see a picture of a keyboard in the book, that you actually have a file that you can, just open up and put on your keyboard, and you should be able to just play it, plug and play a little bit more, so you don't have to do so much homework. So for tunings that have single, or I shouldn't say tunings, but like mappings, sets of notes on the keyboard that have a single chain of fifths, a single circle of fifths, from 5 tones up to 56 would fit all on the keyboard, and then some that don't fit on the keyboard that have got extra notes. They're all there up to 94. A whole bunch of multi-ring mappings, which are tunings with multiple circles of fifths. Sorry, I used the word tunings again. These are not even tunings. These are just like meta mappings. So it could have 10 tones, and it doesn't have to be any equal temperament. It's just showing you which keys represent which notes, and you can tune the notes however you like. From 10 all the way up to 87. Those are all in sort of Bosanquet style, so they look basically like a piano. They've got major seconds going up that way. They've got minor seconds coming down this way. They've got the white keys are white, like the naturals of a piano would be. Sometimes if they've got black keys, they've got black keys. If they don't, they would have rainbow-colored keys that represent the sharps or the flats. But there are some mappings that I've given you that don't do that as well. Some Mohigira mappings, which I think came from Mike. Some Tetracot mappings, which may have come from Amelia. I'm not 100% sure. Miracle mapping from, it was inspired by what George Secor did, but I think it might have just been mine. And chromatic mapping that was mine as well, with 94 different notes per octave, so it's way more spread out. And then we've got 2 mappings that are sort of on beyond the boundaries of what would be pretty normal, with such narrow fifths that the sharps become negative and the flats become negative. So C sharp would be lower than C, E flat would be higher than E. and then one with such wide fifths that the other semitones, the diatonic semitones, like that E would be higher than F, or that C would be lower than B, kind of screws up most of our regular musical logic. But yeah, 23 is a really lovely equitemperament that does both of those things, so I figured might as well use it. It's got a reasonably small number of notes. Use that to sort of demonstrate my purposes. Making tuning files, I've given you a few little hints. I haven't provided my own tunings for everything, but I have for all the specific well-temperaments. I have let you use the Scala archive, which is free. It's got 5,000 tunings in it. It'll have plenty, but I do encourage you to make your own. Equitemperaments are very straightforward, and there's a really easy way to make equitemperaments in Scala that I can show you if you need to, but there's a button for it. Same as in Scale Workshop is really handy. And then some little tips for piano tech to get things sounding right if you want to use piano tech like I've been doing, how to line things up, setting your octaves and your MIDI channels and all that kind of stuff. Just practical nonsense. So into the bulk of the book. The first chapter is sort of just some background on my interpretation of Helmholtz. You might as well just go and read Helmholtz if you want the detailed, proper, good version, but gives you a little bit around harmonic series. There's a link to Helmholtz right there. And some intervals. So this is a good chapter to get into before we're into scales and chords and different tunings, just to know where our intervals laid out, the different sort of looks of a keyboard as well. If we're looking at the Halberstadt, the traditional keyboard, look at a major chord, look at all the different shapes that it makes, in different keys. And then if we look at the same thing on an isomorphic keyboard in a Bosenket mapping, and you can see all of these guys have the same shape, even though they're in different keys. One of the advantages of an isomorphic keyboard in the first place, and sort of one of the namesakes of the book. I called it Microtonality in 55 keys before, because the keyboard was originally planned to have 55. And of course, like from just before I released the book, the keyboard was finalized with 56 keys, but anyway, I've given that name to the second edition. And what was I going to say about that? Yeah, it's a really great... having an isomorphic keyboard means that you only have to learn one set of fingerings, one set of shapes for one key, essentially, and you can move it everywhere else. It's like having a capo on the keyboard that you can move around. So you don't have to memorize different shapes for 56 keys, which would be ridiculous. And if I had that in this book, it'd just be thousands and thousands of pages. So yeah, I'm glad that I've got it down to a bit more than 500. It's a long enough book as it is. Where was I? You will notice maybe in the first couple of chapters, maybe a few more hyperlinks, and maybe there we go. Yep, some differences in color schemes. So I used to use this color scheme, which was like just fully rainbow colors with blue keys on the naturals. Used that for the first week that I had the Levertone, and then I changed my mind because it just wasn't helping me, and it wasn't helping other people that would pick up the keyboard. They wouldn't know what notes were what. So I very quickly decided, just why don't we make the white notes white and keep the black keys black if they can be black as well. Sort of similar to the prototype Terpstra colors, but just extending that to a rainbow. So interval sizes, interval shapes on the keyboard, from unisons and octaves through to going through the chain of fifths, fifths and fourths, major seconds, minor sevenths, and yada yada yada. Our general set of diatonic intervals, how they lay out on the keyboard, that should be pretty similar. If we add a whole bunch more notes, the sort of chromatic set and the enharmonic set of 31 notes, you'll notice there's links to different sections of the book, which will be helpful to jump around with. I made this big section on solfege, on solmisation, how to apply syllables to the sort of tonal practice of microtonality. And I was a pretty big fan of doing this, but have since kind of turned off. So I've got a little note at the start. I don't really do this anymore, but it's there if you want it. And I think it's good to have some sort of set of, whether you use numbers or solfege or note names or something, some kind of way to relate what you're doing, even just with your voice. Of course, the keyboard kind of does it for you. There's an instrumental association. There is a sound with every note that you play, but it's great to get them in your mind and in your voice and in your ears. So yeah, there's a little note on solfege. There's some different systems compared, and you'll notice I've got different vowel sounds, which kind of go from darker vowels to brighter vowels as you go through the pitch spectrum. I've generally stuck to the Sargam version of this, like sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, but you can also apply it in your traditional Western solfege version, do re mi fa sol la ti do. The problem is, though, that of course with all these microtonal accidentals, you get all these different vowels. So it doesn't sound like a traditional set of, set of syllables. So it's new to use, but it's there if you want it. You can, of course, take that system and run with it, or change it, or totally ignore it. Up to you. That is, a little diagram of our keyboard. Is it the same diagram? They've added a key since then. So there's the 56th key right there. And you'll notice I had, in the first edition, I had everything laid out from D. D was my lowest note. But yeah, the first few days of having my Lumitone on D, it just didn't sort of vibe with most of the piano repertoire. Having a low D and a high C at the top of the keyboard just wasn't the right range for me, so I moved everything over to A. So my current range spans from A1 up to G at the top of the keyboard, 5 octaves above that. You can work out what that A is. But yeah, anyway, there's a letter name of every key on the keyboard if you like it. Those are not going to change throughout the whole book, except for the non-Bosenket mappings. Interval size boundaries. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. It won't be great to explain on a video, but there are sort of some strict-ish boundaries when we get into what starts to happen if fifths are too narrow or if fifths are too wide. There kind of comes a point where things turn into chaos on either side. So I end up sort of, and actually both of these diagrams, these kind of line up. With fifths narrower than about 686, where we have 7 notes in an octave, 7 equal, we get negative sharps and flats, and above 720 we get negative diatonic semitones. So yeah, I think I already went through that. I actually recorded this whole video and I realized that the sound was off, so sorry if I'm repeating myself or if I'm leaving things out, but that's me trying to record what I just did again. Some diagrams with a whole bunch more notes. If we had 41 different notes in an octave, you can see as the fifths increase, all of the major interval lines are going to go up, they're going to get steeper, and all of the minor interval lines are going to go down. But there are a whole bunch of crossovers, so you can sort of see some enharmonic equivalences. 681 cents, we can start seeing some stuff crossing over. 686 cents, we can see a lot of things crossing over. There's actually only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different notes, which would make sense. That's 7 equal. So that means all of those are enharmonically equivalent to, that single place in there. 33 equal as we keep going. Where am I? 33 equal, 26 equal, 19 equal was probably here. 31 equal somewhere in here, 12 equal, 29 equal in here, 17 equal, 39 equal, 22, 27, you know, you get the idea. But all of these, if I wanted to click on that, it's going to give me the 7 equal page, and I will get into that soon. Let's jump back to where we were, just above here maybe. Probably should have pulled out the index. Maybe I should pull out the index. And where were we? We were in building blocks, interval sizes. So yeah, you can jump through the book in a quite handy way with obviously the contents, the different chapters. But you will see these hyperlinks come up again and again through the book, so you'll know, jump back and forth wherever it feels comfortable. It's sort of a reference book. You can read it from start to finish if you want, but it's definitely to use while you are playing around, while you're learning, while you're listening, while you're, working stuff out, more than just, you read the book and then you know how to do things. So where was I? Jumping into some melody after we've had all of these interval size things. I probably haven't changed too much of these paragraphs, but looking at little parts of a scale. So ajnas, the plural of jints, a trichord with only 3 notes, a tetrachord with only 4, and a pentachord with only 5 notes. A little scale fragment that we can move around the keyboard, and maybe we can join 2 or 3 together to get an octave scale. Maybe we can join 4 or 5 together to get a sort of melodic universe where we might have multiple tonics. But yeah, these are the sort of smallest melodic shapes, which will be really helpful. If I have just one interval type in a jints like this, you can't rotate them around to get any other modes. So you'll see that this one's only major second and major second. I can't reverse them to get anything else, so there's only one mode here. But for every scale, I've got some sort of alternative names, which might give you an idea around the temperaments, some sort of generally Middle Eastern or Turkish maqam that might have that this mapping might be useful for, or that might be similar enough in intonation to give us that idea. And then some sort of traditional Western pedagogical names like whole tones and stuff like that, major and minor and Dorian, all the rest. For each of these, I've given you generally a little explanation, some ratios if you're lucky. If you're thinking about this in JI, that may, may sound good. It may bring out the kind of the color that you're looking for in the scale. But occasionally I will just give you a range of different sizes of fifths, and they may have different ratios for them. What else was I going to say? The notes here are generalized, so you call that first note C. If that's a unison, that's C. A major second up is D. A major third up would be E. And of course these steps are just the interval sizes, right? We got a major second between these two and a major second between these two. We got some sargam, some modified sargam from the chapter before in terms of sa re ga ma pa da ni sa. I've called the root of everything sa. And if you see altered vowels, it means that we've got an altered. You can go through that chapter for major, minor, super major, sub minor, neutral, all that kind of stuff. We get different vowels. And then finally, we get some different fingerings. If there's only one, it'll be my recommended fingering. Generally, I've got the one on the top that I like the best. So 2, 3, 4 works pretty damn well for that. 1, 2, 3, of course, works pretty well. 3, 4, 5 works pretty well. I haven't found any other fingering to be ideal for the right hand. And I didn't write out any left-hand fingering, so I've left that all as an exercise for the reader, because the geometry is not quite symmetrical for the hands, right? It feels a little bit different doing the stuff on the right hand versus on the left hand. So yeah, you might find some new left-hand fingerings that you can write in your own book, your own version of the book. But I didn't want to go through everything and doubling it up. Just given right-hand stuff to give you a little idea to start. So we've got, major and minor trichords, their modes, schismatic, major and minor, their modes, some rarer kind of Middle Eastern trichords, harmonic, like from the harmonic minor or harmonic major. We've got rust, we've got sikka, we've got going into tetrachords with 4 notes. Same sort of idea, just going a little further. Sometimes I've given a little different fingering. If we're going higher, we might want to put our thumb down so we can keep going. Otherwise, we can finish off with the 4th or 5th finger. Sometimes I'll give a range of fifths where things will work really, really well. Sometimes it's a single range. Sometimes they'll split it up into multiple ranges. And again, if it's a popular scale, it's going to have a few different names probably. It's going to do a few different jobs. So we've got some tetrachords, jumping down. We've got some pentachords with 5 notes now. And you'll see some of these are spanning a little bit more vertical space on the keyboard. So you might see, actually, I got 2 that I can show you. So if this is a rust with the 3rd way down low, we may have, a sort of similar sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We may be able to get that same sound, but by moving the mapping around. Where was it? Here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So sometimes I'll give you a sort of an alternative mapping. I call this one the up above, the rust up above with the neutral 3rd way up high, and the other one I called it the down below. No, that's not the one. The rust down below. Here we go, with the neutral 3rd down there. So sometimes you'll find one of these is easier, particularly for the right hand, where we've got our thumb that can tuck underneath, versus trying to do the same thing up high might not be as natural for you. Sometimes some really small, narrow ranges for where a tuning might work, within a cent or something. Sometimes within a few cents. Giving you a little bit of some Macam practice, just because I was pretty obsessed with it, and it was definitely a big part of me writing the book was me getting into, or the 2nd edition at least, was getting into Sami Abu Shumaiz's stuff on Macam lessons on YouTube. You should definitely check those out. I've linked to him a whole bunch in the book. He's like my best reference, I think. So pentachords, same idea, going through, and then we start getting full octave scales. So if we start putting a red key for not just the lower octave but also the upper octave, we go through pentatonics with 5 notes. We go through, if I scroll down a little bit further, 6-note scales like the blues scale. We go through 7-note scales like all the diatonic scales, the melodic minors, harmonic minors, all that kind of stuff. All of their modes. Generally, I'll have every mode of a scale unless I don't think it's going to be very helpful. So even things like double harmonic, there are some quite nuts modes there. The 3rd mode there, Phrygian flat 4, flat 7, or what is this one? Mixolydian flat 2, flat 5. Kind of bizarro, but it's probably helpful enough for a few people. So all of your traditional heptatonics, and in heptatonic scale chapter, we've got some triads, because we generally like to think about what chords are in a scale. So from the 1, we've got in this harmonic major scale, we've got a Phrygian chord, a major chord, and a sus4 chord on the 1. We've got flat 2 augmented, or flat 2 augmented 2 augmented 4. Some new types of, that's like almost like a diminished triad with augmented seconds instead of minor thirds. The 3s are diminished, the 4 can be major or sus, 5 is diminished, 6 can be Phrygian minor or dim 4, flat 7. I've got a tridim as a new type of diminished chord with an augmented 4th instead of a diminished 5th. And yeah, most people will know about major and minor sus chords. Lydian and Phrygian chords are all up for grabs. Some alternative fingerings. Sometimes thinking about a chord like as thinking about a scale as a chord, you know, your jazz chord theory and stuff. Major 13, sharp 9, sharp 11. You can sort of see 1, sharp 9, 3, sharp 11, sharp 5, major 6, major 7, 1, da 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 D. Oh, I can't even sing that, but you get the idea. Oh, that's a mistake, isn't it? That is a mistake. I will have to change that. Major 13, sharp 11, sharp 9, sharp 11, sharp 5. Damn, I thought I'd caught all the mistakes. I've been through this multiple times, but I'm the only one reading through it, so there may be a couple of things that you can grab for me. A couple of Indian ragas that I've referenced. They're of course not going to give you the raga, they're just a scale, but maybe helpful for that kind of stuff. Those are all of the diatonics, all of the heptatonics. And then we get into scales that have a larger number of notes. So the 12-note scales, the sort of chromatic modes, you've got plenty in there. And I just did this vertically because it wasn't going to fit horizontally. The same thing with the duodene, which is a great, looks kind of bizarro on the keyboard there, but a great 12-note chromatic scale from Alice. If we've read Helmholtz, Alice's translation has a bit on that. And then getting into 17 and 19 notes per octave. These don't have to be equal temperaments, they're just sets of keys on the keyboard that can be tuned however you like, but good to think about having 12, 17 or 19 notes. There's a lot of chords there, right? And then 22, if you're thinking of 22 notes, you're probably thinking of the Shruti system, and used in northern India. There's some ways to think about it. It doesn't always have to be JI, but there's some JI reference for you. And then moving over to chords. So shapes of chords. We've got 3-note chords like major and minor. We've got some 4-note chords like sevenths, and I've got even some 5-note chords like ninths, which may or may not make sense in terms of inversions. A little chapter on voicings, just to give you a few little ideas, even if you're doing something in a different temperament with some more complex notes, and generally in sort of with a JI bent to it, thinking about how it would work in JI, or if it's not in JI, just thinking about sort of interval sizes and spreading things out. Comparisons between tunings, so comparing if we have slightly different generator sizes, if we have a slightly different step sizes, or if we are on an equal temperament. With each equal temperament here, I've just listed out some of the prime factors that work really well. So in a way, we could say that maybe, some of these tunings look kind of like, if they've got similar groups, they might do a similar job. 50 equal with 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and 23 might do a pretty similar job to 31 equal, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 23, and 41. Unless we include, 13. 13 is kind of the odd one out, and 41. If I ignore those factors, those tunings should do a pretty similar job at representing that. And of course, there are temperaments that connect things up. There are, have I talked about all that stuff? Probably have. Temperaments and stuff that link different tunings up. And going on into JI, where we get a whole bunch of ratios. The groups, so starting from assuming that we have octaves prime 2, and we have perfect fifths, prime 3. We get Pythagorean tuning. We add in prime 5, we get 5 limit tuning. We can take away 5 and add 7. We can add 7 and 5 together. So I give you all the combinations up to, I think, the 23 limit. And for each group, I've given you some notable commas and an example of where that comma could occur. Most of these I've given you a Zen wiki page. So that'll give you some more information. There's a lot on the wiki. The Zen Harmonic wiki that people have written out over the years, a lot more than there used to be. So there's a ton of different groups, how intervals connect. Every tuning is good on some group. So there will be a group in there that, there's a lot of groups there, that you'll like quite a bit. There's the final big group of everything that I'm interested in. I only went up to 23 because I thought that was enough. But even there, those are the thirds in JI that are good, and there's a lot of scope for different intervals that lock in a really nice way. So if I've included notable commas in a previous section, if I've already included 459 to 460, I'm not going to include it again down here. So that's why these are all pretty complex for ratios, relationships between ratios even. Going a bit further into detail on the ratios, I've got this little outline into 311 parts. Doesn't need to be there, but I thought it was quite cute to keep that there as a little reference, a little tribute to Gene Ward Smith. Of course, all the stuff is in cents as well. Cents are the main way that we generally measure things. For each ratio, I've got its usual numerical ratio. I've got it factored, so you can see prime 2, prime 3, prime 5. It's a 5 limit interval. A name that's been used historically or just by me. Most of these are, I didn't make up most of these. Most of these are reasonably common relatable names, but there are an infinite number of ratios in the universe, and you could create an infinite number of names, but there are some actual good systems. I got them here, probably in a different section of the book, where I've given you some articles that were written on, better naming systems. But for now, comparing, the sizes of all these things, so that you know what's there in the little world of JI. What does everything sound like? Totally encourage you to actually play this stuff with Scala, with Scale Workshop, with Piano Tech, with whatever you're using. Harmonic Experience is amazing as a book on the 5 limit ratios, but it doesn't really go beyond that. I've just kind of described what I feel like for each of these little commas moving through to bigger intervals, the seconds, the thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, the sevenths, all the way up to the octave. And I've given some sort of similar sounding or related intervals for each. And if you're lucky, a bit of a sort of a use case. A table of interval buckets. I think this might be already a new section that wasn't in. Oh, I can't do that on this version. Interesting. Yeah, so the first version PDF doesn't really work the way that I was thinking it would. But yeah, the second edition, you can just kind of click to a chapter and it should go right there. So let's just jump on over where we think we might be. Somewhere back a little bit. There was our table of ratios. There were the sounds. And then I think I just jumped into, there we go, the tuning systems. But in this version, I've got some little buckets because I think it's cool. It's helpful to think in terms of interval buckets, whether they're sort of diatonic or chromatic or a little bit finer than that as well. So this is a little table that I wrote up not that long ago, a couple of months ago probably, and I've color-coded everything in terms of the color scheme that I've got in the book. in 94. So these are 94 different little micro buckets of intervals. A little sort of range for each, a shorthand for each if you want to use a notation, a little description that I've got, and some ratios that you can associate with each, going all the way through from 0 up to 1200 up to the octave. Then we land where we were over here, so a little extra chapter. But actually you'll see there's some more writing there. Yeah, I've written sometimes quite a bit more. The chain of fifths is very important. The color scheme, I changed things around quite a bit, but I've basically gone for the colors of the rainbow, you know, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, with black in the middle. And then the same sort of thing with the light colors of the rainbow. So I've got pink, which is like light red, light orange, light yellow, white in the middle, light green, light blue, light indigo, and light violet. So hopefully most people can remember the colors of the rainbow. Just stick white and black in the middle, and then you're kind of good to go. Has some cent ranges that would work. And for each of these tunings, I've got a little diagram with some hexes showing you the steps if you're in an equal temperament. If you're on 0 at the moment, if you go this direction, how many steps do we move? So in 31 equal, if we go up a sharp, we move up 2 steps. If we go up a minor second, we move up 3 steps. If we move up a major second, it would be like moving up 2 and then 3 steps, so moving up 5 steps. And then likewise, if we move down 5 steps, get us to 26, and so on. So there'll be a little one of those for each tuning. There are a couple of tunings that I've added outside the diatonic range, but most of it stays within that range because it's the range that works. So the only ones that I've added there are 23 equal in, is that the narrow version? That's the narrow fifths 23, some notation and stuff, and then wide fifths 23. They're both kind of weird mappings. They don't seem to make as much sense, so they don't even have any black keys. Sharps and flats basically don't work in the way that you expect them to, so have some fun with those too. Everything else, though, from here on follows the normal rules. So we've got a diatonic scale, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, back to A again. But in 7 equal, all of the A's, whether they're sharps or flats or whatever, are related at the same note. All the C's are the same, etc., etc. So there's the hex diagram, pretty straightforward. And I've given you about a page on each, with a little bit of notable music. Sometimes I've given you a link, sometimes I've just said, like, listen to all this stuff. So stuff from Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, definitely getting pretty damn close to 7 equal, even if it's not exactly an equal temperament. And as we get slightly larger fifths, we're getting into 47, we're getting into like flat tone, 40, 33, there's a little section on flat tone, 26, 45, into mean tone. I mean, you could think flat tone is part of mean tone, but I'm just sort of being a bit more specific for breaking things up into sections that make even more sense. So the sort of classic mean tone tunings, 19 equal, a bit of music there, a few videos, 50 equal, I've got a few little things there, 81 equal, I haven't really found much music, I don't think I put any there. If the tuning has too many notes, they won't all fit on the keyboard, right? If there's 81 notes in the tuning and there's only 56, you can imagine that the tuning could keep going up and down further. So you won't get everything, but you'll get a good chunk of it. 31 equal, a lot of people's favorites. And then getting a little bit wider as we go, 55, all the way up to 12 equal. So we can see white and black with no extra color rainbows as we expect. Into schismatic temperament, the sort of Pythagorean side of things. Slightly wider fifths as we go into gentle. So 29 equal, some leapfrog stuff, some little tables and stuff that I drew up. 46, 63, 80 equal, supra, 17 equal, some inverse gentle, some super pyth, 22 equal will be a lot of people's favorites. So you can sort of see that color scheme that I've had keeps different tunings looking a bit different. So if I spot a color scheme, I'll basically, if I've used it before, be able to remember what it was. They'll stick out from each other quite well. 49, 27, 32. And as the fifths are getting wider and wider, we end up with 5 equal, where we've just got 5 different notes. All of these are going to be inharmonically equivalent. And again, there's our little hex diagram. Some more ratios if you haven't had enough already. What does each temperament do with them? So in 12 equal, you know, if we go up 12 fifths, an augmented seventh gives us a unison. Oh, cool. Might not be so surprising to most people familiar with 12 equal, but what does it give us in 26 equal? It gives us the 10 to 19 ratio. And in 37 equal, it gives us a neutral second, a 10 to 11 ratio. So the further we go, basically, the more different these things are. If we look at the first row there, a perfect fifth generally, for most of these, sounds like a perfect fifth until it goes kind of too far to sound like one. Multi-ring, so tunings that have multiple circles of fifths in them, and how to deal with them. And I think if I go here, yeah. This section I think I added to quite a bit, so you'll notice all the colors are a little bit different. We get to lots of examples actually. When we get to 10 equal, this is how I sort of split it out. I said it was 2 rings of 5. There's an inter-ring vector, a little, if you go to a minor second or a negative minor second, you can move between the rings. And if there's only 2 rings, you move twice and you get back to where you started. And then the difference between the rings. So all the 5-tone equal temperament. Yeah, I've laid it down out differently here. First edition, I just went by size of equal temperament. And you can see I've got a few of them, but not all. And in the second edition, I went by what is the ring that they share. So 10, 15, 20, 25, and even 30 equal all share the 5-tone equal temperament in the middle. So you can see that little pentatonic there just repeating itself with some different colors. Sometimes I'll even give you alternate colors, which I kind of like, you know. Interesting to just see what happens if you change sort of how you're categorizing what's above and what's below. You'll get a different color scheme, which sometimes looks a bit prettier. I like the rainbow ones. So the same with 7s, so 14, 21, 28, and then 35. Getting into quite big tunings in terms of sets of 12s. So you can see 24, which I had in the first edition, 36, which I had somewhere over here. You'll see, these are all looking a little bit different. And yeah, some videos that I made in some of these, 36, 48, 60, 72, even if it's too big for the keyboard. Did I give you, later on I do. A little bit of notation of a harmonic series for some of the stuff. 17s, 19s, 22s, 26, 27s. That's about as big as we want to get, right? 29 times 2 is 58. It's still bigger than the keyboard. 29 times 3 is 87. Is huge. And so, I go even up to 31. 31 times 2 is 62. There's a little bit much for most people, but there it is. You can see our usual ring of 31 there, and then the start and end of a ring at the outskirts there. Some linear temperaments. Did I have this chapter in the first edition? We will find out. Yeah, but it wasn't so big. So I just had a couple of little examples of a 53 tone tuning or a 46 tone tuning, but this time I've given you a few more options. So even if we're not with the Bosenket layout, giving you a massive sort of mega chromatic layout for 94, for all 94 notes in an octave, which I found pretty helpful, but it's a massive, it makes the keyboard feel like you're a 4-year-old on an adult piano. You can't play your normal stuff because the spans are just huge. But we've got that. We've got Mohigira with some different, you can see that the octaves are not going to lay out octaves are not going to lay out horizontally for either of these because they're not built with the normal geometry. Some different kinds of, whole tone, semitone rows. Tiling the keyboard going kind of diagonally. Garibaldi, and then these guys are mapped as if they would be in Bosanquet. So they're all sort of circles of fifths, but they don't have to be equal, right? So we could take a 41 tone tuning of Garibaldi, map it like 41 equal, and think about like the following ratios. There's a whole bunch of, they all sort of within the 13 limit, some classic ratios. Here's some cent values for you, but you'll notice that, for example, there's a semi-wolf, there's a fifth that's not perfect, which will happen in all of these tunings. Doing the same for Garibaldi in 53 tones, you'll find a little semi-wolf somewhere. Doing the same thing with the mean tone circle of 12 notes, of 19 notes, of 31 notes, of 50 notes. So I didn't draw these all up, but I've given you some options for the size of each fifth, and they will give you some circulating tunings and some well-temperaments. Schismatic, the same sort of thing in 12 and 17 and 29 and 41 and 53 notes. Gentle in 17 and 46 and 29 notes. Super Python 17 and 22 and 27 notes. And then some different generators, so temperaments that are not generated by fifths. Magic generated by small major thirds using 41 equal. And yeah, you'll find that there's some non-perfect fifths there if you look far enough. There will be, for example, from here, from that E over to this B, there's a narrow fifth of like, what is that? 695 cents instead of a wide fifth of 703. So because they're not all fifth based, you might find a few little inconsistencies there, which almost feel like a well-temperament, which give you a little bit more key color. But in general, we're getting a better sort of adjustive version than you would get in an equal temperament in most keys. Hanson with large minor thirds, Orwell with small minor thirds or sub-minor thirds, Porcupine, sub-major seconds, Miracle, and then some stuff on Maqam because I was really obsessed with it. Little intro to how can you use it with 41, 53, and 72 equal, which I think are fantastic. There's a little, my sort of hack version of 72 equal that still fits on the keyboard. But yeah, good luck learning all the keys. It's a bit of a pain because it's not isomorphic. And then, yeah, some sort of specialized tunings for 56 notes to make the most of the keyboard. And a sort of revision of the color scheme that I've been using for the rest of the book. All of the Maqam that are available in all the different keys. And 2 different tunings that you might want to use. Thinking about ratios, you could do it in JI as well. And then, yeah, getting into, I think this is all new. Yeah, this is all new. The circulating tunings and the well-temperaments. Yeah, I wanted to do even more detail on these, but I kept writing more and more, and I just thought I needed to release this book eventually. So there's a little bit of information on those. I've got some 12-tone well-temperaments, which that one was one that I was quite proud of a few years ago, all in JI, only using intervals of 2, 3, 17, and 19. I've given you a little printout from Scala, but you can do this in Scale Workshop, and I've actually given you a little link, I think, to each one. There's a post. Yeah, here's a link to the tuning in scale workshop. So Civish made that program a few years ago, and it's been really, really handy as a little online way, even on your phone or whatever, just to load up a tuning and be able to sort of play around with it straight away, compare interval sizes and cent values, rotate it around, do all that kind of stuff. A 53 tone tuning, which is all in JI, that circulates. That is not quite a well-temperament, but I kind of treat it like one. It's good fun. I've got some videos in it. The same sort of thing in 41 tones. Definitely not a well-temperament, but it circulates pretty well. And then in 46, some different ratios. And then that's just about it. A few little words, a bibliography, with some websites that you can go to and some books that you can read. And then another little resource that I think would be handy is all of these YouTube channels that have popped up. I mean, some of them existed a few years ago, but when I first wrote this book, there weren't that many YouTubers doing microtonal stuff. So there are quite a lot, and there's way more than I've listed here, but these are the guys that I like their stuff a lot, that I recommend watching some videos from. There's a whole bunch of Facebook groups that I admin a lot, that have a lot of people posting all this stuff, with instruments that they're building, music that they're making, theory stuff, questions on keyboards, history, all the rest. The Discord is very busy most of the time. The wiki, there's so much information on that. Now in Zen, Steven's podcast has got tons and tons of good interviews. And then, there's all this software that people have put out. There's all these microtonal instruments, guitars and keyboards and all the rest. There's different systems of notation. There's different things that people have made for air training. And articles from over the years. And then just a few thanks. So that's almost been an hour far out. Okay, I was planning to make this for like 20 minutes. By the time I talked about everything, there's a lot. I don't even know when I started this project. Probably, more than 10 years ago. It's been a lot of work, but and it's still not, fully polished. It's not the exact perfect book that I always wanted to make, but it's the closest thing that I'll get, I think. I've spent enough time on it. I'm going to put it out into the world. If people like it, please read it and share it around with other people that might like it. I hope that it helps you find your way around these new kinds of keyboards. I hope that it helps you with understanding ratios and well-temperaments and just intonation, that it helps you create your own understanding of microtonal music, that it helps you get a little bit interested in world music and traditional music, because I think a lot of world music practices are dying out. They're just like languages are dying all the time, there's musics that are dying all the time. And I think by keeping the concept of tuning and even just comparing different, the same melody in different tunings, keeping tuning as a creative choice opens things up quite a bit. Maybe stops us from shutting out so much beautiful music that's been made in the last, 100,000 years or however long humans have been making music for. Thanks very much for watching and listening. This is way too long, but hopefully some of this has been useful. Hit me up if you've got any questions. Otherwise, this will be on my website ASAP. I didn't even mention this. I should have mentioned this at the start of the video. If you've already bought the first edition, the second edition comes real cheap. I'll have finalized prices up in the video description here, but it's way cheaper than buying the second edition as is. Anyway, thanks so much for your support. Looking forward to hearing back from you soon. Yeah, peace and love. Thanks very much.